You open your banking app the way you always do. Not because you're worried. Not because something went wrong. Just out of habit. The numbers load. They don't surprise you. They don't scare you. They don't excite you either. Everything looks fine. Bills are covered. Nothing is overdue. Nothing feels urgent. You close the app. And for a moment, there's this quiet feeling you don't quite name. Not anxiety. Not stress. Just stillness. You're not falling behind. But you're not moving forward either. Life is functioning. Money is behaving. And somehow, that's the problem. You don't feel bad with money. You don't feel reckless or careless. You feel responsible. You feel like someone who did what they were supposed to do. And yet, something feels oddly unchanged. Like you've been standing on solid ground for a long time, watching time move instead of moving with it. You're not here because things are broken. You're here because they're quietly the same. And that familiarity, that calm, manageable, unmoving feeling, is exactly why this might feel like it's about you. You're not careless with money. That's never been your problem. You pay your bills on time. You know roughly what's in your account without checking. You don't swipe blindly and hope it works out later. There's a quiet competence to how you handle things. You plan. You adjust. You make sure tomorrow isn't worse than today. You don't live recklessly. You don't chase every shiny thing. You don't blow your future for a moment of relief. You do what you were taught. Save a little. Spend what's reasonable. Avoid obvious mistakes. And because of that, nothing is on fire. Life feels manageable. You might not feel rich, but you don't feel irresponsible either. You might want more, but you're not ashamed of where you are. There's even a subtle pride in it. The kind you don't talk about. You know you're doing better than some people. You know you've avoided a few traps. You're not failing. And that matters, because so many money conversations start by treating you like you are. They talk to you like you're reckless. Like you need discipline. Like fear is the only thing that will make you pay attention. But that's not you. You're someone who built a life that works. Quietly. Consistently. And if something feels off now, it's not because you ignored responsibility. It's because you followed it. At some point, without any clear moment to point to, time starts moving differently. A year passes faster than you expect. Then another. You remember thinking, once I hit this number, things will feel different. And then you hit it. Nothing bad happens. Nothing good happens either. Your income goes up. Quietly. Respectably. And without any decision being made, your expenses adjust to meet it. Not in a reckless way. In a reasonable way. Slightly better groceries. A little more convenience. Upgrades that make sense. You tell yourself it's fine because it is fine. Bills are still paid. Savings still exist. You're still being responsible. But something else starts to happen, something harder to name. Time keeps moving, and your life looks almost the same. Not worse. Not better. Just steady. You're not in trouble. You didn't mess up. There's no single wrong choice you can point to. That's what makes it unsettling. Because if nothing went wrong, why doesn't anything feel like it's moving forward? It's not panic. It's not regret. It's a quiet question that shows up in the background of your thoughts. Is this it, for now? And you don't push that question away, but you don't follow it either. You keep doing what works. Because it does work. And still, something in you notices the stillness. Not as a crisis. Just as a pause that's lasted longer than you expected. At some point, without any clear moment to point to, time starts moving differently. A year passes faster than you expect. Then another. You remember thinking, once I hit this number, things will feel different. And then you hit it. Nothing bad happens. Nothing good happens either. Your income goes up. Quietly. Respectably. And without any decision being made, your expenses adjust to meet it. Not in a reckless way. In a reasonable way. Slightly better groceries. A little more convenience. Upgrades that make sense. You tell yourself it's fine because it is fine. Bills are still paid. Savings still exist. You're still being responsible. But something else starts to happen, something harder to name. Time keeps moving, and your life looks almost the same. Not worse. Not better. Just steady. You're not in trouble. You didn't mess up. There's no single wrong choice you can point to. That's what makes it unsettling. Because if nothing went wrong, why doesn't anything feel like it's moving forward? It's not panic. It's not regret. It's a quiet question that shows up in the background of your thoughts. Is this it, for now? And you don't push that question away, but you don't follow it either. You keep doing what works. Because it does work. And still, something in you notices the stillness. Not as a crisis. Just as a pause that's lasted longer than you expected. At some point, you notice something strange. Nothing is wrong. Your system works. Bills are paid. Savings exist. There's no chaos to fix. But nothing is really happening either. You're maintaining. Not consciously. Not deliberately. It's just what the system does now. It protects. It preserves. It makes sure nothing falls apart. And to be clear, that matters. You've built something stable. That's not small. But stability has a quiet side effect. It slowly becomes the goal. Without you realizing it, your decisions start optimizing for not losing instead of moving forward. You don't take risks, not because you're afraid, but because there's no reason to. You don't push, not because you're tired, but because things are fine. Every choice makes sense in isolation. Together, they form a flat line. Raises don't change how you feel. More savings don't create relief. Time passes, but your internal position doesn't move. You're not stuck in a crisis. You're stuck in maintenance. And that's harder to name. Because stagnation usually comes with drama. With mistakes. With visible problems. This doesn't. This comes with calm. With responsibility. With competence. Which is why it's so easy to miss. You tell yourself this is adulthood. That this is what being smart feels like. And maybe part of that is true. But there's a quiet weight that starts to show up. Not fear. Not stress. Just a dull sense that something isn't opening anymore. You're safe. But nothing feels ahead of you. And you can't point to a single wrong decision. Because there wasn't one. It's the absence of movement that's heavy. Not panic-inducing. Like standing still for so long that you forget what forward felt like. Nothing breaks. There's no emergency. No sudden bill. No late-night spiral. It happens in a quiet moment. Maybe you're doing something ordinary, scrolling, waiting, standing still for a second longer than usual. And a thought shows up. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just clearly. If nothing changes, this is it. Not in a hopeless way. Not even in a scared way. Just factual. You don't panic. Your heart rate doesn't spike. It feels more like looking at a calendar and realizing how fast pages turn when no one is marking them. You see the pattern. Not emotionally, structurally. You recognize that your life isn't trending downward. But it isn't opening either. And that realization lands differently than fear. Fear wants action. Fear wants escape. This doesn't.
This feels sober. Like standing in a well-lit room and finally noticing you've been facing the same wall for years. You're not angry at yourself. You're not disappointed. You just see it. Clearly. The system you're in will keep producing the same outcome because that's what systems do. And for the first time, you stop asking, what am I doing wrong? And start noticing something else. This is working exactly as designed. There's a strange calm in that. Because awareness doesn't rush you. It doesn't demand change. It just removes confusion. You're not lost. You're just standing still, and now you know it. And once you see that, the noise in your head quiets. No urgency. No shame. Just a steady, grounded seriousness. Like realizing you've reached a plateau, not because you failed, but because you've been walking on level ground for a long time. And the moment isn't dramatic. It's honest. And it doesn't ask you to run. It just asks you to notice where you are. You notice it slowly. The more you follow the rules, the more the system smiles at you. Bills are paid. Deadlines met. Savings growing steadily. People would nod if they looked at your life. And that nod feels safe. Safe becomes comfortable. Comfort becomes mistaken for progress. And before you realize it, being good feels like being successful. But deep down, there's a quiet tension. You're capable. You're adaptive. You take responsibility. You do what you're supposed to do. Yet somehow, the results don't feel like your own. That's the trap. The system wasn't broken. You weren't broken. You were playing by the rules that never counted for the outcomes you actually wanted. You start noticing patterns you hadn't named before. Raises come in, but the feeling doesn't. Savings grow, but your sense of freedom doesn't. You work hard, but the metrics that matter are invisible to everyone else, except the system. And suddenly, you exhale. It's not just me. You weren't failing. You were following the wrong scoreboard. The relief is subtle, almost quiet. Not triumphant. Not dramatic. It's the soft release of guilt, the gentle lifting of confusion. And, for the first time, you see the rules clearly. They reward obedience. Not ownership. Compliance. Not intention. And that insight that this isn't personal, that it's structural, gives you a strange sense of control. You can see the game now. You weren't losing. You were being measured by someone else's ruler. And that clarity, quiet, precise, is empowering. Because once you understand the trap, the choice of leaving it or redefining it feels yours. No yelling. No drama. Just understanding. Just seeing. And finally breathing. You pause and notice something. Control hasn't been what you thought it was. It wasn't about cutting back, tightening belts, or always saving another dollar. It was about direction. About knowing where your choices lead. About noticing the path you're on instead of blindly following it. All those rules you followed, the careful decisions you made, they weren't wrong. They just weren't yours. And that's the quiet shift. Control doesn't live in restriction. It lives in awareness. In naming what matters. In seeing which actions move you forward and which only maintain the illusion of safety. You realize progress always felt risky. Not because you weren't disciplined. Not because you were reckless. Because growth requires uncertainty, a small discomfort you'd been taught to avoid. And suddenly, it makes sense why staying safe felt easier. There's no shame here. No mistake to fix. No urgency. Just clarity. You can feel the weight lift. The mental space opens. You can breathe a little easier. And with that awareness, control feels lighter. Not heavy. Not a burden. It's yours. Quiet. Intentional. Calmly empowering. The game hasn't changed. You have. And that alone shifts everything. You notice the smallest things. A pause before a purchase. A moment spent asking, do I actually want this? Or is it habit? You don't overhaul your life. You don't quit your job or move across the country. Nothing dramatic. It's subtle, almost invisible. But it shifts how you measure success. Winning isn't doing more. Winning is noticing. Being intentional with what you already have. The weight eases. You can breathe. You feel the difference between reaction and choice. It's not exciting. It's not urgent. It's steady. And somehow, that steadiness feels powerful. You're not rushing. You're not panicking. You're simply aware. You realize control isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the pause before a decision, the space to notice, the freedom to continue without force. You can sit with this. You're ready. Not pressured. No alarms. No grand gestures. Just a gentle reminder. You've been doing your best all along. The story doesn't tell you what to fix. It simply reflects what you already know. You see yourself in the quiet moments, in the small patterns, in the things you never named before. You feel seen, understood, grounded. And somewhere in that recognition, a soft shift occurs. Not a transformation. Not a verdict. Just a mirror. It lingers. A thought you'll carry through the day. A quiet understanding that someone finally put words to what you've felt all along. Take a moment. Reflect. Share it with someone quietly stuck in the same loop. Subscribe if this resonated. Not for advice, but for recognition. This wasn't a warning. It was a